It's 1945 and World War II is over. Adolf Hitler is dead. So are his top lieutenants, Heinrich Himmler and Joseph Goebbels. But dozens of high-level Nazis are still alive and in prison. What do the Allied powers do with them?
After World War II, the world demanded justice, and many of Hitler's top men were hunted, tried, and punished. But not all of them. While Nazi leaders fell one by one, some of the most dangerous SS officers vanished without a trace. Armed with fake identities, hidden wealth, and secret escape routes, they slipped through the cracks of history. Today, we're diving into the chilling stories of 10 SS officers who were never found, and the disturbing theories about where they went. 1. Heinrich Müller. When Soviet forces closed in on Berlin during spring 1945, top Nazi leaders faced a grim choice. Some ended their own lives. Hitler pulled the trigger in his underground bunker, while Joseph Goebbels poisoned himself, his wife, and their 6 young children. Others ran for their lives. Adolf Eichmann hid successfully in South America for 15 years before Israeli agents grabbed him in 1960. Most Nazi leaders either perished in the war's final chaotic days or fell into Allied hands to face trial, like Hermann Göring, the head of Germany's Air Force. But one powerful Nazi figure simply disappeared without a trace. Heinrich Müller commanded the Gestapo, Hitler's dreaded secret police force, throughout most of World War II. Working alongside Adolf Eichmann and under Reinhard Heydrich, known as the Blonde Beast, Müller helped plan and carry out the Holocaust. He sat at the 1942 Wannsee Conference, where Nazi leaders formally approved their plan to murder all European Jews. The Gestapo, under Müller's command, became one of the most feared organizations in Nazi Germany. They arrested, tortured, and killed countless people across occupied Europe. Müller ran this machinery of terror with cold efficiency, showing no mercy to anyone the regime considered an enemy. His reputation for ruthlessness made him one of the most dangerous men in Hitler's inner circle. The last confirmed sighting of Müller came on May 1, 1945, just one day after Hitler and Eva Braun killed themselves. People saw him at Hitler's government headquarters. Hitler's personal pilot, Hans Bauer, remembered Müller's chilling final words. "We know exactly how the Russians operate. I have absolutely no plans to become their prisoner." After that night, Müller vanished completely. No solid proof of his location or fate has ever surfaced. He remains the highest-ranking Nazi official whose destiny is still unknown. Theories about what happened to Müller have swirled for decades. Some people believe he died in the final battle for Berlin, buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in the rubble. Others think he escaped and lived out his days in hiding, perhaps in South America, like so many other Nazi fugitives. A grave in Berlin was supposedly identified as Müller's in 1963, but when investigators exhumed it years later, the remains didn't match his dental records. This discovery only deepened the mystery. If those weren't his bones, then where was the real Heinrich Müller? 2. Aribert Heim. Aribert Heim wasn't your typical physician. He was a monster disguised in a white coat.
Aribert Heim, one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals, was thought by the world's top Nazi hunters to be hiding in South America.
He took pleasure in causing agony and death to helpless victims. His brutal medical experiments on Jewish prisoners went far beyond cruel. He felt no guilt whatsoever, and people knew him by a terrifying nickname, Dr. Death.
Heim was branded Dr. Death by survivors and victims of gruesome and often fatal medical experiments.
Heim worked at concentration camps, where he conducted horrific procedures on prisoners without anesthesia. Survivors later testified about his sadistic behavior. He performed unnecessary surgeries, removed organs from living patients, and injected poison directly into hearts just to see how quickly people would die. He treated human beings like laboratory animals, showing excitement rather than remorse at their suffering. One particularly disturbing account described how Heim operated on a perfectly healthy prisoner, removing his organs one by one while the victim was still conscious. Another survivor recalled Heim keeping skulls on his desk as twisted trophies. His cruelty seemed to have no limits, and he appeared to enjoy every moment of the pain he inflicted. When the war wrapped up, American forces captured Heim to stand trial. The people he tortured and their loved ones expected justice at last. Instead, they were disappointed. Heim slipped away, leaving his horrific crimes behind. For years, Heim lived a normal life in Germany, working as a doctor and even operating a successful practice. He married, had children, and blended into society as if nothing had happened. Nobody suspected the friendly doctor had once been one of the Holocaust's most sadistic killers. Decades passed, yet Dr. Death's terrible acts weren't forgotten. Survivors began speaking out, and investigators started piecing together evidence of his crimes.
There's no evidence that the crimes that Aribert Heim committed were medical experiments that were ordered by his superiors.
Many people wondered where he might be hiding, but nobody could figure it out. Then, in 1962, authorities learned that Heim had created a false identity for himself and prepared to flee. Police rushed to his residence, hoping to arrest him, but they arrived too late. He'd already fled, abandoning his family to deal with anger meant for crimes they didn't commit. His wife and children claimed they had no knowledge of his past, left to grapple with the horrifying truth about their husband and father. Wild guesses spread about his whereabouts. Some thought he lived in Egypt, calling himself Tariq Farid Hussein. Others claimed he was somewhere in South America or Spain. Nobody could say for certain. Reports occasionally surfaced, claiming someone had spotted Heim in various countries, but none could be confirmed. The mystery of his location became one of the most frustrating cases for those seeking to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. How could such a wanted man simply vanish? The answer finally came out in 1992 when the New York Times revealed that Heim had died from cancer in Cairo.
It has been revealed that the fugitive spent decades in Cairo and has been dead since 1992.
According to the report, he had lived in Egypt for decades under his assumed name, converting to Islam and working in the community. He lived many years as a free man, while his victims never saw justice served. This pattern of escaped Nazis finding safe havens would prove disturbingly common, as another brutal commander was discovered. 3. Heinz Lammerding. Heinz Lammerding held an important position in Germany's military as commander of the SS Das Reich Division during World War II. He rose through the Nazi ranks quickly, earning a reputation as a dedicated and efficient officer who carried out orders without question. When Allied soldiers landed in France on D-Day, French resistance fighters started striking back at German troops across the countryside. These brave fighters attacked supply lines, ambushed patrols, and made life difficult for the occupying forces. After rebels captured a German officer, Lammerding commanded vicious revenge attacks that killed more than 800 innocent people in 2 towns, Toul and Oradour. The massacre at Oradour-sur-Glane stands as one of the war's most shocking atrocities. On June 10, 1944, Lammerding's troops surrounded the peaceful village. They rounded up all the residents, separating men from women and children. The soldiers locked the women and children inside the church, then set it on fire. Those who tried to escape were shot. Meanwhile, the men were herded into barns and gunned down with machine guns. Almost the entire population of the village was murdered in a single afternoon. The troops then looted whatever they wanted from homes and businesses before burning the entire village to the ground. Only a handful of people survived by hiding or playing dead among the bodies. The brutality shocked even other German officers, but Lammerding showed no remorse for ordering the attack. Following Germany's defeat, a French court put Lammerding on trial. The verdict surprised nobody guilty with a death sentence. But he never faced execution because both British and German governments refused to hand him over. The reasons for this refusal remain controversial. Some historians suggest that Cold War politics played a role, with Western governments more focused on the Soviet threat than punishing former Nazis. Lammerding returned to Germany and lived openly, making no effort to hide. He built a successful engineering business and lived as a free man in Dusseldorf until cancer killed him at age 66. He gave interviews, attended social events, and acted as if he'd done nothing wrong. The fact that a convicted mass murderer could live so comfortably outraged many people, but legal complications prevented his arrest. But while some Nazi criminals like Lammerding lived openly after the war, others went to greater lengths to hide, finding protection in unexpected places. 4. Alois Brunner.
That German war criminal Alois Brunner reportedly led a miserable existence in his final years.
Alois Brunner ranked among the most vicious Nazi war criminals of the Holocaust. As a high-ranking SS officer and Adolf Eichmann's right-hand man, Brunner organized the deportation of tens of thousands of Jews to death camps. His efficiency at rounding up and transporting victims made him extremely valuable to the Nazi genocide machine. Brunner's cruelty stood out even among Nazis. He personally tormented Jewish prisoners, and survivors never forgot his sadistic behavior. He showed zero hesitation, sending children, elderly people, or sick individuals to their deaths, often bragging about his role in mass murder. Brunner supposedly once said he wished he had killed more Jews. This statement, made years after the war, showed he felt no guilt whatsoever for his actions. He wasn't just someone following orders. Brunner eagerly participated in genocide. His dedication to exterminating Jews, combined with his personal savagery, made him one of the most terrifying figures in Hitler's regime. He personally supervised deportations from Austria, Greece, and France, where he ran the notorious Drancy internment camp near Paris. From Drancy, thousands of Jews were shipped to Auschwitz and other death camps. Witnesses described Brunner as taking pleasure in separating families, forcing parents to watch as their children were taken away. He reportedly laughed at the suffering of his victims and showed particular cruelty toward the elderly and disabled, whom he viewed as worthless. When World War II ended, many top Nazis were caught and convicted at the Nuremberg trials, but Brunner escaped Allied forces. Using fake names and secret escape routes called rat lines, he fled to the Middle East. These rat lines were networks set up to help Nazi war criminals escape Europe, often with the help of sympathetic clergy members and former Nazi intelligence officers. By the early 1950s, Brunner had reached Syria, where he used the false name Dr. Georg Fischer. He arrived with the help of a passport provided by the Catholic Church, though church officials later claimed they didn't know his true identity. Syria's government protected Brunner, and he reportedly advised Syrian intelligence services, teaching them torture and interrogation techniques. He became a valuable asset to the Syrian regime, sharing knowledge gained from years of running the Gestapo's operations. Syria's refusal to hand him over, plus his skill at hiding, kept him free for decades. Despite being one of the world's most wanted Nazi fugitives, Brunner stayed out of reach. Multiple international attempts to catch him, including operations by the Israeli Mossad, all failed. Mossad agents mailed him bombs twice, in 1961 and 1980. These assassination attempts badly injured him, costing him an eye and several fingers, but Brunner survived both. After the bombings, Brunner became even more cautious, rarely leaving his apartment in Damascus. He lived in a small, run-down building in a poor neighborhood, relying on the Syrian government for protection and financial support. Guards watched his building to prevent further assassination attempts. France, Germany, and other Western nations tried bringing Brunner to justice, but diplomatic obstacles blocked them. France convicted him in absentia in 1954 and sentenced him to death for war crimes. Despite pressure from international human rights organizations and Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal, Syria consistently refused to surrender Brunner, who enjoyed government protection under Presidents Hafez al-Assad and Bashar al-Assad. What happened to Alois Brunner remained unclear for years. Around the early 2000s, conflicting stories about his death appeared, with some suggesting he died in Damascus around 2001. In 2014, the Simon Wiesenthal Center stated that Alois Brunner likely died in 2001, but the circumstances surrounding his death remain unclear. Syria never officially acknowledged his presence in the country, nor did they release any details about his life or death while there, leaving much of his story shrouded in mystery. 5. Karl Silberbauer. Karl Silberbauer was an SS officer who worked under Adolf Eichmann, one of the main men behind the Holocaust. His job was grim but clear: track down Jews in hiding, break into their safe spaces, and send them off to concentration camps. He did this without much thought, seeing it as just another part of his work. In August 1944, Silberbauer led a Gestapo raid on a building in Amsterdam. Hidden inside was the secret annex, where Anne Frank, her family, and 4 others had been living in silence and fear for over 2 years. Someone had given them up, though no one knows for sure who it was. When Silberbauer and his team stormed the rooms, they found 8 scared people who knew their hiding days were over. Silberbauer searched the place for money and jewelry. While doing that, he shoved papers onto the floor, including Anne Frank's diary. To him, it meant nothing. He had no idea that those pages would later become one of the most powerful voices of the Holocaust. The 8 people arrested that day were sent to camps. Anne and her sister Margot died from typhus at Bergen-Belsen, just weeks before freedom arrived. Only Anne's father, Otto Frank, survived. After the war, Silberbauer went back to Austria and slipped into a normal life. He even joined the Vienna police, putting on another uniform like nothing had happened. For years, no one around him knew his past. That changed in 1963, when investigators exposed his role in Anne Frank's arrest. Silberbauer didn't deny it. He said he was just doing his job and following orders, and didn't understand why people were angry. Austria let him keep his position, which shocked many people. He eventually retired with a pension and died in 1972, remembered not for what he became, but for the lives he helped destroy. 6. Otto Skorzeny. Otto Skorzeny was born in Vienna in 1908 and grew up during a time of deep political unrest in Austria. By the early 1930s, he had aligned himself with Nazi ideology and joined the Austrian Nazi Party. When World War II began, Skorzeny entered active combat and was sent to the Eastern Front. He took part in Germany's invasions of Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, where the fighting was brutal and unforgiving. These early campaigns helped build his reputation as a bold and aggressive soldier. By April 1943, Skorzeny's career had taken a sharp turn upward. He was placed in charge of Germany's special forces, leading a unit of elite SS commandos trained for risky and unusual missions. His defining moment came when Italy's dictator, Benito Mussolini, was removed from power and locked away by his own people. Furious, Adolf Hitler personally selected Skorzeny to rescue his fallen ally. Skorzeny planned a daring operation. Using gliders, he and his men landed on a remote mountaintop hotel where Mussolini was being held. The attack was fast and unexpected. Italian guards were overwhelmed, and Mussolini was freed without major resistance. The mission shocked the world and made Skorzeny famous almost overnight. Photos of Mussolini standing beside Skorzeny spread across newspapers, and even Britain's Winston Churchill called the raid an act of great courage. Hitler rewarded Skorzeny with a promotion, and from then on, he became the man trusted with the most dangerous assignments.
His name was Otto Skorzeny. He was Hitler's favorite commando fighter. He was the guy who rescued Mussolini.
In 1944, Skorzeny led another bold operation, this time kidnapping the son of Hungary's leader, Miklos Horthy Jr. After a short gunfight, Skorzeny's team captured him, wrapped him in a carpet, and flew him to Berlin to pressure Hungary into cooperation. His final major mission came during the Battle of the Bulge. Skorzeny led Operation Greif, sending English-speaking German soldiers dressed as Americans behind enemy lines. The plan caused confusion and fear, even sparking rumors of a plot to assassinate General Eisenhower. After the war, Skorzeny surrendered and stood trial, but he was cleared of charges. He later escaped custody, settled in Spain, and quietly helped former Nazis flee to South America, ending his life far from the battlefield that made him infamous. 7. Walter Rauff. Walter Rauff didn't lead dramatic rescue missions or command elite troops, but his role in the Holocaust was just as deadly. An SS colonel, Rauff was closely involved in the creation and use of gas vans. Trucks modified so engine exhaust could be pumped into sealed compartments, killing those trapped inside. These mobile death chambers were used across Eastern Europe and were responsible for tens of thousands of murders. After the war, Rauff was captured in Italy by Allied forces, but like many others, he escaped from a prisoner of war camp. From there, his trail led through secret networks that protected former Nazis. He was hidden by the Vatican for a time, then smuggled to the Middle East, eventually settling in Chile. What makes Rauff's story even more disturbing is that between 1958 and 1962, West German intelligence secretly hired him as an informant. Despite his past, he was paid and protected while living openly under his own name. When investigators later linked him to the deaths of around 90,000 people, several countries demanded his extradition. Chile refused, arguing that too much time had passed. Rauff remained free, living a quiet life until his death in 1984. Former Nazis even attended his funeral, honoring him as if nothing had happened. His escape from justice wasn't unique, though. Some men didn't just disappear into quiet lives. They carried their cruelty with them, like Kurt Franz. 8. Kurt Franz. Kurt Franz joined the Nazi killing machine at a young age and showed an early eagerness for violence. He became part of the T4 euthanasia program, which targeted the sick and disabled, before being transferred to extermination camps like Belzec and later Treblinka. Despite his youthful appearance, Franz was known for extreme cruelty. At Treblinka, Franz became one of the camp's most feared figures. He enjoyed humiliating and torturing prisoners and was especially notorious for setting his large St. Bernard dog on inmates, laughing as it attacked helpless people. Survivors later described him as sadistic and proud of the suffering he caused. For years after the war, Franz lived freely. It wasn't until 1959 that authorities finally arrested him for his role in the murder of more than 300,000 people. In 1965, he was convicted, but justice still slipped through the cracks. Claiming poor health, Franz avoided serving a full sentence and returned to civilian life in Germany. Even more chilling was what police later found during a search of his home. A photo album he had titled "Beautiful Years." It contained images from the camps, treated like fond memories rather than evidence of mass murder. Franz died having spent most of his life free, a pattern that echoed again and again. And while Franz hid behind illness, others hid behind new identities, none more infamous than Klaus Barbie. 9. Klaus Barbie. Klaus Barbie earned the nickname the Butcher of Lyon for good reason. As the Gestapo chief in Lyon, France, he made it his mission to crush the French resistance and hunt down Jewish families.
Barbie expelled from Bolivia to France. I think that it's for me, a German non-Jewish.
He personally oversaw torture sessions, deportations, and executions, sending thousands to their deaths with chilling enthusiasm. When the war ended, Barbie should have faced immediate justice. Instead, he was recruited by US intelligence, who valued his knowledge of communist networks. Protected under a false name, he lived quietly in post-war Germany before being smuggled to South America through secret escape routes known as the Rat Lines. Barbie settled in Bolivia, where he lived openly for decades, working with military regimes and advising security forces. It wasn't until relentless efforts by Nazi hunters Serge and Beta Klasfeld that his past finally caught up with him. In 1983, France succeeded in extraditing him. His trial forced France to confront painful questions about collaboration and resistance during the occupation. In 1987, Barbie was sentenced to life in prison, finally held accountable after nearly 40 years. Yet even Barbie's conviction stood out precisely because it was rare. Many others avoided serious punishment altogether, especially powerful figures like Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski. 10. Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski. Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Waffen-SS and a man whose career was marked by extreme violence and cruelty. During World War II, he held powerful command positions in both the Soviet Union and Poland, where he oversaw operations that led to the deaths of countless innocent people. Unlike soldiers who fought on the front lines, Bach-Zelewski directed large-scale actions aimed at wiping out entire communities. One of the most horrifying episodes linked to him took place near Riga, where forces under his command were involved in the murder of around 35,000 people. These killings were carried out with cold efficiency, often targeting Jewish civilians. What makes this even more disturbing is that Bach-Zelewski later bragged about his role, openly claiming that he had helped eliminate the Jewish population of Estonia. To him, mass murder was not a source of shame, but a twisted point of pride. His name became even more feared in 1944 during the Warsaw Uprising. As Polish resistance fighters rose up against German occupation, Bach-Zelewski was put in charge of crushing the rebellion. What followed was a campaign of terror. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed, civilians were executed in the streets, and homes were burned to the ground. By the time the uprising was over, at least 150,000 civilians had been killed. along with around 15,000 members of the Polish underground. Warsaw was left in ruins, and Bach-Zelewski's reputation for brutality was firmly sealed. Yet despite this record, he largely escaped justice after the war. Instead of being charged for his wartime crimes, Bach-Zelewski testified at the Nuremberg trials, a move that helped protect him from prosecution. His cooperation made him useful to the Allies, and that usefulness spared him from answering for the horrors he had ordered. In 1951, he was sentenced to 10 years of home detention, not for war crimes, but for his involvement in killing German political opponents. Additional sentences were later added for similar offenses. Even so, he was never tried for the mass murder he directed during the war. Bach-Zelewski died having avoided true accountability, a grim example of how some of the worst perpetrators of World War II escaped the justice their victims never received. And there you have it, a chilling reminder that not all of history's darkest figures faced justice. Which of these escapes shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from history.